We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the March 2nd rescheduled meeting of the Academic Standards Committee of Council Rock. We have a number of board members present, as well as administration and a number of interested members of the public. If we could go around the room and identify ourselves for anyone who might be listening. My name is Kyle McKessie, and I am representing the Council Rock School Board.
And I'm Stephanie Barry Terrace, parent in Council Rock.
Ed Tate, School Board Director.
Sue Elliott, Assistant Superintendent.
Bob Francis, teacher.
Mark Lilac, School Board Director.
Wendy Thomas, School Board.
Mike Thorwald, School Board.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough.
Denise Brooks, School Board.
Gary Pazian, and I live in Richburg Middle School.
It's a good way to put it.
I said it, you were live.
Any other folks, please?
And Barry Lambert, Director of Services for Schools. Ryan Murphy, School Psychologist at Salt Thompson Elementary.
And my student teacher at Elementary. Karen DeKubic, I'm a parent in the district, and I'm also in the student at Del Val doing an internship in administration.
Right.
Danielle Jordan, high school elementary. Casey Black, I'm a school psychologist at Rosenhouse in Newtown.
I'm David Huster, Supervisor, Special Ed and Gifted at Richboro Middle and Council Rock South.
Christina Mueller, Richboro Elementary.
I should note that Dr. Frazier is not joining us this evening. He is traveling on district business. Mr. Block, I am aware, is traveling on business. Jerry Grupp is present, although he has stepped out of the room, and I am not clear on Dr. Foster's status. We have 3 items to...
Barry did step in the room after introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry. Barry Desco is also present, and we have 3 items for discussion and/or updates tonight. The first will be Title I foster care provision update, integrating technology, and an update on the humanities program. And I will turn it over to Dr. Elliott.
Thank you very much. So the first update this evening is really just that, a very quick update to inform the board and the community on some of the changes that are happening as a result of the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind to the Every Student Succeeds Act. One of the laws that we have is called the McKinney-Vento Act, which was for homeless students under the No Child Left Behind Act. That particular act incorporated homeless students and foster care students all under one lump group and actually identified foster care students as homeless. With the reauthorization of that bill and ESSA, it has broken those 2 things apart. And actually now, with joint guidance between the Departments of Education and Health and Human Services, they've titled it the Ensuring Educational Stability for Children in Foster Care Act. And basically what that now means is the point of the changes that we need to do, which are really not for us many changes other than it's what we already do for kids, but now we just have to have it written down for the federal government. The point of this change is to minimize the disruption for students. When you think about our foster care students, for many of them, one of the most stable and secure places that they are in is probably their school. And many times when foster care placement happens, those students may end up in the past having to leave their home school because of where their foster care placement is, because they're being moved somewhere. And so we're in essence taking them out of what might be the most stable environment for them right now and moving them to a different place. So the intent of this act is to really make sure that the best determination for the child is to look first at, is it the best determination to keep them in their home school as opposed to the school of residence where they're moving to maintain that stability. And because of that, there are some things that we have to put into place. Many of these we already do, but it's now officially we have to have them put into place, and I just want to inform you of what that is. So one thing, we have to collaborate with our local children and youth agency on a regular basis. So that is something that's already in place. We had to, as a district, identify a foster care point of contact person, and that person will be the person who will solely be the one to do all of the communication with children and youth as our main point of contact, and that is going to be Rudy Lamberth, one of our pupil services supervisors. The next thing that we had to do was we had to come up with a transportation plan. We've worked with our supervisor of transportation, Andy Rowe, to really look at really what we already do, but put it down on paper and formalize it a little bit more, as we needed to submit paperwork to the state to show that we are doing this. So our transportation plan pretty much follows what we already do for our students, where we transport them to different locations and work with other districts as well to kind of minimize any kind of transportation that we need to do. So we've got that plan in place, and we've submitted that plan to children and youth. It has to be a joint agreement between children and youth and the district. So currently our plan is in the hands of children and youth and their solicitor to review. Again, they're having to review plans for every district in Bucks County. So it's taking them some time to just go through things and make sure things are okay. But, you know, basically I wanted to inform everyone of this is, we're already doing this. We've just put the paperwork in place that we need to meet the regulations. And I'm very thankful for both the Bucks County Children and Youth and also our Bucks County Intermediate Unit for really trying to bring all the districts together at one time with children and youth, so that when we consult and talk about this, we didn't have to worry about trying to come up with multiple conversations, that we could all be in the room together. So that's made the process much better. Are there any questions about this information item? Yes.
The point of contact, who did you say that is?
Rudy Lamberth.
Okay, so what's his title?
He's the supervisor of pupil services in the district.
And how many of these foster care situations do you envision in a year? And what have you had experience with?
I do not know how many we envision in a year. And I did know the number that we currently have, and right now I can't remember. It's not big at all.
I'm just curious about, so this person that you designate, I'm worried about bandwidth, right? So what I think I hear you saying is it's not going to be a significant impact on his day-to-day, right?
Already something we're doing.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So right now in Bucks County, if there's a child that comes into care from Bucks County into Council Rock home, you'll transport them to their home school. To their home school.
It's a best determination decision. So it's a case-by-case basis. So children and youth will work with our point of contact. If that student is coming from another district, they'll also probably connect with that other district to talk about what's the best decision for this kid. So in some cases, it might be that they decide as a group, it is in the best interest to move this student to the new location, the new school. And in some cases, they might decide, and for various reasons. For example, a student who might be a high school student who's in his or her junior year, and it makes more sense for that student to stay in school where it's established with coursework, with clubs, activities, with friends, to maintain that situation. So again, it's a case-by-case basis.
And we already bus kids.
We
that
do.
are determined if they're going to stay in the home school.
We already do, yes. Yes, so the point of this was really just to emphasize the best determination, best placement determination decision, and really trying to first think about making sure we're thinking about whether or not the student should stay where they were, rather than just assuming they're going to go.
Dr. Early, I apologize on the call. And if you cover this, I'll apologize. Do we have a policy around this? Is this covered in policy? And the reason I ask, because we just had our policy meeting, and we had our policy around migrant students. We said, gee, let's pull that back to look at it in concert with our policy around, or how we handle children who are homeless, meaning the federal act. And this sounds like this would be part and parcel of the same.
Correct. We do not have a policy for this because it's brand new.
Okay.
Our foster care children before were covered under homeless, separate under the new federal law with every student succeeds act.
Okay, so then actually asking to have those three things reviewed together makes it great. Okay.
And we can look at that. And this, it's law. It's what we have to do. as far as the plan, so it's something that,
Makes sense,
you know, we've
yeah.
discussed, do we really need to have a policy for it if it's actually law?
Agreed, but let's just make sure that it's really the way we handle it. Maybe maybe two or all three of them have commonalities we can.
Well, I can tell you the way we handle homeless is exactly the same way we're handling this.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is looking at the integration of technology. Here we go. So with me tonight, as he introduced himself, Bob Francis, is one of our teachers in our district, sixth grade teacher at Rolling Hills. He's also a member of the technology committee and has been really integral in helping with the work we've been doing to integrate technology, thinking about it at the elementary level. Just want to make note that Hannah Pressman, who's in the audience tonight listening, is also another teacher who's been part of that work and has been involved in what we're doing. So the International Society for Technology Education, or what it's known by its acronym ISTE, developed standards based on their vision for the use of technology as a way to amplify and transform learning and teaching. So the standards, and you have a copy of those standards in front of you this evening. Those standards, they move far beyond when we think about technology. It's not just about devices, integrating devices and giving kids the tools. It's really about how technology can change pedagogy and learning as a result of it being a useful tool in the classroom in the 21st century. So in Pennsylvania, the use of technology is incorporated into most of the academic standards as they've been revised. So you'll see, rather than having a standalone, these are the technology standards in Pennsylvania, they're woven into our standards. For example, in the PA core standards for language arts, one of the standards focuses on using technology to produce and publish writing, and that is directly connected to the ISTE standards and what they are talking about. So what we're doing is we're preparing our students for careers and work that do not yet exist. And as such, we need to provide them with the learning necessary to be productive citizens in a global society. And we need to help them to learn how to leverage technology to enhance their learning and their thinking. And by integrating the standards as part of our curriculum, we're providing students with the opportunities to connect the standards and technology to a variety of contexts with real-world application. So first, Bob's going to provide you with an overview of the ISTE standards, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing to integrate them. If you click yourself.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So if you just take a look at the handout which was distributed, this basically breaks down the 7 different standards which ISTE currently uses to break down technology for students. What you'll see is that this was most recently updated in 2016, and it focuses on a variety of different things, from skills to mindsets to different things that children are going to need to be able to develop into those jobs like we talked about that aren't even really created yet, and we're kind of heading them in the right direction. So in the handout that you have in front of you, basically you can see down the left-hand side is what the ISTE standard reads, and that's directly from their website, which you can see at the bottom of the page. What we then did as the committee is we worked together on what would that mean in student language for us? How could we communicate that to students so that they have an understanding of what our expectation in the district is of them? And you can see that on the right side of the handout then what the committee came up with. So the 2 that we're going to focus on mainly are standard number 6, the creative communicator, and standard number 1, the empowered learner. And we're going to be able to give you some examples of what the committee has determined are ways that students would be able to demonstrate those, just as an idea of how we're looking at these.
So what we did was pull together a group of teachers representing kindergarten through 6th grade, some librarians, other folks, IST teachers, etc., who really are knowledgeable and experts with using technology in their current roles. Had representation from all buildings. We targeted elementary because most of the ISTE standards, when you look at what they are, the actual instruction and learning of those standards happens predominantly at the elementary level, and then when you get to the secondary level, it's more application and greater level of use, more complex level of use than it is teaching them something new. Yes.
So this runs K through 12.
The standards run K through 12, yes. So what we did was, as a group, we came together, and as Bob said, we looked at these standards, put them in student-friendly language, and then we also looked at each of the standards and came up with a coding system to indicate if this particular standard, when is it introduced? When are we expecting students to be able to know how to do this? And when do we expect them to apply it? So the teachers worked together to kind of code each standard across the grade levels, and they looked together as a group vertically to make sure it made sense for the level of progression of learning for students for each of these standards. And they all have some sub-skills under them as well that they looked at. So once they did that, then as a group, we really started to look at, now, how do we connect them into our current curriculum? So what are the ways that things that we're already doing in our curriculum that we can show how this connects? And Bob's going to share a little bit of that with you in a minute. So they spent a lot of time really looking at how, and they're still working, this is a group that's continuing to meet, how does it connect into math, to social studies, to science, to language arts, to show how we use technology as a tool, and we leverage it, and we leverage these 21st century learning skills as a tool. They created I can statements, again, that are friendly for students, and the group is also working on developing an implementation plan. So now we have this, how are we going to ensure that all teachers understand and feel comfortable with implementing these standards and connecting them to their curriculum?
My next question was going to be, are we going to uniformly do this throughout the elementary schools?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Dr. Ellis,
yes.
Can you remind me, where does this standard come from?
The ISTE standards, they come from the International, the International Society of Technology Standards.
And where's the directive come from? Is it PDE? Is it from the?
ISTE is an international organization, if I can jump in.
Absolutely.
ISTE is an international organization. It's been around for a long time. It's made up of educators from around the world, United States, everywhere. And what they've done as a group is they have committees, and they put these studies together based on real world examples and what they're seeing in terms of lacks. Standards. So, and you can go on the website, you can download the booklets. They have standards for teachers, they have standards for students, they have standards for administrators. The things that, as an organization, they're not for-profit organizations, so they put together these standards. And a lot of schools across the country, across the world, have adopted their standards. And in fact, Pennsylvania State curriculum has kind of integrated their standards into the curriculum as well.
So it's something we're required to do?
No.
Okay.
Well,
I thought you didn't, maybe because you said it's part of Pennsylvania State.
Yes, because they're integrated into PA standards. You'll see them as actual standards that you can make a direct link. Oh, this standard links directly to this ISTE standard. So when Pennsylvania worked on, particularly most recently, the PA Core for Math and Language Arts, because those are the two sets of standards that have most recently been revised at the state level, the language, 21st century learning skills is embedded throughout those standards. So there's a direct connection, and they used ISTE information to help build those standards.
Okay, so it is a requirement. So
as it is in, yes,
okay.
It's embedded in our.
I just feel like,
yes.
Because when we talk about adults teaching kids how to use technology, I feel like it's a jet pilot. We're teaching a jet pilot how to drive, right? A jet car, it's just.
Right.
So I don't mean to be cynical. I just, if it's something we're required to do, we're required to do it. But if we're spending time and money on something that I think they probably know better than most of us, right? I don't know if there's a real value, but maybe Matt's saying, yeah, in the industry, there's a deficit there.
Well, the reason that we're not separating out and saying, all right, kindergartners, this is how you use a mouse, which is what we did probably 10, 15 years ago, is because it's ridiculous at this point to do that.
Right.
What we are doing though is this may not be the appropriate term, but I like it, we're celebrating the fact that these kids know technology, and we're celebrating during the educational process, we can demonstrate, oh yeah, this is where it makes sense, this is how you use the mouse effectively, this is how you use Microsoft Word effectively to communicate, this is how you use PowerPoint to effectively communicate. So we're teaching at the very basic level, starting in kindergarten, this is how you use a mouse. But by the time they get to second and third grade, we're building on the foundation that we know they already have. So they're developing mastery as they go along. And you're right, there are some teachers that say to the kids, well, show me how to do that. And I don't think that that will ever change because I know that I asked my daughter to show me how to do stuff, and technology is my thing. So I don't know how else I'd say it, but yeah, so we're not focusing on separating it like they used to. It's now part and parcel of what we do on a daily basis.
To that point, and I don't think it's for discussion, and I think our chair is going to tell me to be quiet and let you guys finish your presentation. But I don't know how we get to these standards when we don't provide the tool. You don't have a first grader show up to first grade, they don't bring a pencil and they can't write. It's just a tool. If the kids don't get computers, if they're not sitting, you guys all came to the meeting with your computers in front of you. I don't go to a meeting at work without a computer in front of me. But our kids don't sit in class with computers in front of them. Or some of them.
They don't.
Some of
They
them
have-
don't.
But they have access to technology.
But that's not the same.
It's
That's
not
not
the
the same
same,
as
but
when
they
you go to
do have
college and
access.
everybody shows up with it. So I get it, we want them to say, oh, check, we know you have that computer or that technology skill, but you don't have the tool to use that skill when we're doing math and English and science and that, because you've got to go and do it at this time for this allotted period of time and check, we know you know how to do that. That still, to me, still makes this completely separate and not integrated, and it's,
Right.
you need money to do that, I know that.
Yes. When you look at these standards and what they are, these standards are not about how to use specific
I was just gonna say
technology.
the same thing.
These standards are about 21st century learning skills, and I'm not going to steal Bob's thunder because he's going to talk about that. But they really link to, you know, critical thinking. How do you behave in a 21st century way, and how do you leverage technology to help you do that? And our kids do have access to
But
technology.
that's just saying you know how to go and use the technology. That is not the same
Yes.
as sitting every day in a classroom using a pencil, and in today's world, that would be using a computer. And other districts do that and give out computers to everybody, and they still run their buildings, and they still are able to do things, but I don't know. We
I
need to
think,
do it.
if I just could say one thing in response to Mark's comment, I think from an intergenerational standpoint, these kids could probably teach our kids how to use Snapchat and Instagram, and I'll teach our teachers. But I think there's more value in this than you would think, because they don't necessarily understand or have the basic tools. They've moved on to the level above the basic tools, in my own experience.
I don't know, my kids use Word, PowerPoint, and Photoshop all the time, but.
See, what I think the message here really is, it's good that we don't know. I think the message really is, Matt, I've changed my job many times in the time you've known me. And I've changed the technology I use many times in the time you've known me. But there are certain key elements of function in terms of validating what you're using, understanding the general principles of it, and integrating whatever it is into moving the process forward. I think that's what this is about. That it's not necessarily, here's Word versus not Word. I don't know what else it would be now. Microsoft Word Perfect wouldn't work, but and we're not, and it's not HTML versus Java versus Python versus. It's the concepts that once you have the concepts, anything you take into it fits into that framework. And I think that's what we're really trying to get to here. That to give them the framework to analyze and to use, because otherwise we'll teach them to use yesterday's technology for tomorrow, and that's going to be a loser. So we have to teach them the concepts that underlie the technology, so they can keep applying that, and it will be iterative and incremental as they change it thereafter. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but that's not what was said, right?
No,
So
that's what it's.
I mean, that makes sense to me, but I think someone talked about Word, and I'm pointing the map, but I'm not sure. But that's fine. My point was, I wanted to find out if it was a requirement that we do this, or is an elective that we do this, and maybe should our time be spent someplace else? I don't know. But that was
It's embedded in the
question.
standards, it's important. We're doing a disservice to our students if we don't help them understand how to learn these standards and apply these skills.
That's fair.
And just my commentary was basically, I was pleased to see that there's no specific technology mentioned in the standards.
Correct.
None. Exactly, none. It's concepts.
Yes.
Let's dig deeper. Go ahead.
All right.
So the first standard which we're going to address is the creative communicator standard. You can see it's also outlined on the handout that you have in front of you, but it's where students are going to understand the reason behind using that technology, what they're employing it for, and the features that it gives them when they're making some type of presentation. Now, we brought up Word, we brought up PowerPoint, things like that. It could be as simple as that, or a lot of classrooms now are transitioning into using Google Classroom and things like that, where documents can now be shared between students and they can work on it simultaneously. So constantly developing as technology develops, and we can implement new things into the classroom as well for those students to be able to use. So it's not necessarily simply just those basic things like you talked about where maybe they do already have some of those skills, but it's something that we're developing as teachers as well that, you know, now we can give them something new that they haven't used before and give them a different avenue that they can express those things. So, you know, this is about them choosing the appropriate platform, creating something that's original for themselves, or if they find something somewhere, knowing the proper way that they can repurpose and use that to communicate their ideas clearly and effectively, and then obviously to be able to present it to an audience, whether that's an informal presentation or a formal presentation. The next slide is going to basically show you the elementary scale of how this would be worked out. So on a second grade level, students are going to be making a presentation. Things might be implemented at this point where a second grader should be able to be instructed and be able to copy and paste photos, to be able to pull a fact that goes along with the insect that they're using for a project and to make sure that that fact appropriately goes along with the photo, to be able to put a heading on it and to size the heading so that that's appropriate for what a slide would be, so that they're able to present that to then their class and communicate that, you know, during that particular part of the curriculum when they're studying insects, that they are able to communicate about their insect, but to be able to use technology to do that. Because what you'll see in the majority of classrooms around the district is that's what we do for the students each and every day, is we're presenting on the technology which is behind us. So, you know, we would expect them to be able to do the same thing. And as we then go on to sixth grade, basically this is going to be an extension where, again, it's kind of the next level of what we'd expect for them. So at the sixth grade level, each year the kids do research on a specific topic that they develop. They develop a question, they research that question, they present it back. So in this case, this would be, you know, the students being able to import and embed a video into their presentation, to know the difference between, you know, this is something that I'm just throwing in there for style because it's a video and it looks really good, versus this content is actually something that's adding to my presentation because it talks to what it is that I'm presenting.
You know, we used to hear that third grade is a magic year. And third grade is magic because the first half of the year was learning to read, and the second half of the year was reading to learn. So do you have some transitional period? Is there a transitional point in this too?
So what you're going to find is, as Dr. Elliott talked earlier, we've gone through the standards and basically identified whether there's something that's going to be introduced, reinforced, whether the student should be proficient in it, or whether they're applying it because they're already proficient in it. And I don't want to say that there's a specific area like you referred to third grade, because for each of those different standards, it's going to look a little different. So there's points where we're going to hit certain things and introduce them in kindergarten, and there's other points where that standard might not be introduced until second grade. By the time, for the most part, they hit the end of that elementary into middle school, they're proficient or applying every single one of the standards that's on that list. So the next one that we're going to move ahead and look at is standard number 1. So in looking at standard number 1 on your sheet, that's the empowered learner, where the students basically have an understanding of the different things that they have available to them, that they're informed about and competent about how they use those in communicating their ideas. And so this is really just kind of how we spoke, of them having an idea of the variety of different things that are out there for them to present themselves. Whether that's making that PowerPoint, whether it's sharing a Google Doc, whether it's using some type of social platform for older students where they can again, on the next slide, I'm just gonna break down what the bottom would be of elementary to the top of elementary. And this is gonna hit a little bit on the point that you just made, where certain things are gonna be introduced at kindergarten. So a kindergarten teacher may introduce the use of some form of technology through a KWL chart, through something like that, where they can show the students different ways that they can present information, show that they comprehend what was being presented in class. But this is something that they can do together, that the students can see the teacher manipulating on a board, so they can also gain those tools and the ability to use that technology while also seeing it in use. Where then again, when we go to the 6th grade level, this is something where we would expect the 6th graders to be able to be proficient and to apply this. So they would not only be able to use the tool proficiently, but be able to use it to show that they have a clear understanding of the material that was being covered and that they're presenting. And again, this, for the 6th grade level, and I can speak directly to that a little bit clearer, is that has a lot to do with that research that we do, because all of these kind of fall into that category when they're making this presentation. They're going to hit a lot of these different standards all at that same time where they're able to do that.
So we highlighted just 2 of the standards to show you kind of the breadth of how it changes a little bit over the grade levels. And, you know, as I said earlier, with looking at how we're training and educating teachers, we know very well that among all of our teachers, there are varied levels of expertise and comfort with technology. You know, we've all even said here tonight how we have children teaching us how to do things and different levels of comfort. As we as a group have talked about the best way to move forward with training, we really believe that it's important to tap into the experts we have in the buildings, teachers that are comfortable and are constantly experimenting with how to integrate technology and how to also integrate these standards into their curriculum, and to do it in a way that those folks are kind of side by side with other teachers and coaching and supporting, as opposed to setting up a single training where we're going to train you all how to do this and now go out and do it, because we need to honor the levels of different comfort that people have and support them, and the best way to do that is with one of your colleagues helping you and supporting you. So our group is going to continue to meet and work on this. We're not completely finished with the work, and you know, kind of finalize our plan for how we're going to continue to train and support so that all teachers feel comfortable and understand how this connects into their current curriculum, and how to utilize the technology and the tools that they do have in their buildings with their students. So, Kyle, do you want to do any comments about this before we move on to the next subject?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I just had a thought. So this is great. I'd love to see it. I'd love us to consider what it would cost us. And it's probably not a K to 6. But if we said we're going to buy one classroom, well, we couldn't buy one. So there's 4 teams in each of the middle schools. Let's just say, no, it's 7 and 8 or whatever. But 4 English classes going on. And what if every day they came in and they had just that one class? So it would be 30 Chromebooks that sit there, and they had to learn the whole program with a computer in front. It wasn't like, oh, go do the project and show me that you're proficient in doing research and you know all that. It is every day what you do in this class, you do with that computer in front of you. If it's take notes, if it's do a presentation, a tool you go off and show me you're proficient in, it's your pencil.
Do you care what the teachers might have to say about that?
I'm just saying that the gap for us is not, can they do a proficient skill? The gap is that they don't use it every day, every class.
They don't need to, though.
Well, they have a transition when they go to college because that's the expectation. So
Well,
I'm saying this would be a proficient level. You would say maybe it's a semester, maybe it's not the whole year, but it's not a separate thing. It's just part of that class for that thing. And then what they're learning is how to use that tool every day, every lesson, it's like an everyday thing. It's like a pencil and taking notes for them. And so you could pick a class and you could say, for this class, for this 6 weeks or whatever, this is going to be your tool. That's what I think the high school kids are missing.
Isn't that, Dr. Elliott, I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yes,
Ms.
well, you
Thomas.
probably would.
Is that what's referred to as one-to-one
Yes, that would be
technology?
one-to-one.
But we can't do the whole, we already know we don't have enough money to do the whole high school. But I'm just saying, the same way, I like how you're doing this throughout the grades, the thing, and some of them would bring their own stuff. I know we have to bring their own device, blah, blah, blah.
So just to respond to that one-to-one thing, Barry, Dr. Elliott and I have spent a lot of time talking about this. The ball's actually in my court right now. I'm working on budgeting, showing how we could phase into a one-to-one initiative, K through 12. At the elementary school, there would be a cart that would be shared between 2 classrooms.
Okay,
Because you don't always need.
right, I agree. You don't need it every minute of every day. Got it, yep.
And then eventually, by the time you get to the high school levels, probably starting at the middle schools and even higher, I think that's where we were at, 7 through 12, kids would have a one-to-one.
Oh, wow,
So
I didn't know
we're
that.
looking into that now in terms of how it would phase in, how we handle the training, what would the cost be? Because this isn't a simple matter of saying, write me a check for $1.2 million and we'll make it happen. Because there is a large training component to this for the teachers, for the staff. There's a large support component to this. What happens when Chromebook fails? What does a student do? So we're actually taking what we've learned from our companions and professionals at other districts that have done this and been through this, how they've handled all of these different issues. I'm having lots of conversations
Okay,
with IT directors.
Great. My thought was just another thought to a way to get that skill without having to do one-to-one in the whole school in every class.
Correct, and I can see too, and Bob, you can speak to this probably as well, that we do have devices in buildings, and kids are using them for extended periods of time. Are they having the device in front of them every moment of the instructional day for 6 weeks for something? Not necessarily, but they might be working on projects for a certain number of weeks, and as they're doing that, or they're doing some activity in their classroom for a certain number of days, they have the computers, the devices, and they're
Absolutely.
engaged. So
It's 15 years ago, when my kid was in 2nd grade, she was doing a presentation, taught me how to use PowerPoint. So I get that. I think that's great. That's elementary school. And I don't know that they need it every day, but they just need an exposure of what it's like to go to every meeting that you have professionally, every class you have in college, and write your notes or take some, and my daughter still handwrites as well, but the laptop is there and there's some interaction at different parts randomly, as opposed to, okay, now it's the cart time, here comes the cart, we're gonna work on this project now, and then we're gonna take it away because it's not an everyday thing. It's like you guys have taught me, it's a tool. It's not learning to use how the computer anymore, it's just a tool.
The way in a hospital.
He's been trying to get a word in edgewise.
Thank you.
I couldn't see it.
That's all.
It's my fault.
Where are we with bring-your-own devices? Is that active now?
Absolutely, and it is well used. What we found though is that the kids will tell you they don't want to bring their devices in. They want to use their phones.
Why?
They
Why
don't
don't- So I get that they want to use their phones, but okay.
They already have them.
Can they use their phones in class?
In the high schools, absolutely. There are lots of classrooms where they're doing that today. And they're starting to do that at the middle schools as well. And I've actually had a couple of requests from principals at the elementary schools. What are your feelings about this? And from a technology standpoint, I'm go for it, but it's really about classroom management and at what level do you allow them to do that? So that's not really that's an academic question. So I just push it.
So what do they do with their phone? So they can use their phones like they would a Surface Pad or a laptop.
Exactly.
And just take a notes.
Yeah, the old
Like we
fingers.
all do, right? So
They're
get a
very good.
notepad or something like that.
They get a pulse.
See, that's-
What an iPad is to me, right, because the phones are so big.
See, what I was trying to say was that I understand your thought about having it in front of them all the time. A couple thoughts. If you look at hospital emergency rooms versus trauma centers, in the emergency room, there are only a few doctors, and you wait for the doctor. That's kind of the way we've run it, which was there are a few laptops and you wait for it. In the trauma center, there are lots of doctors, and they wait for the patients because it's an emergency. And so we need to be somewhere in the middle. Because my problem is, I go to meetings now, and I see the value of some of my meetings are diminished because people brought their laptops. Because I want to engage them in the conversation
Because you weren't taught. In high school, nobody made you sit there with a laptop in front of you, pay attention and learn. You just want to teach them what they should be doing.
Well, my experience, and you should talk to my wife about what having laptops in the classroom does. For one, the teacher's in the back of the class.
I'm not saying.
I was just gonna ask you.
I'm not saying
it's-
every class all day. I'm just saying it's a skill the kids are leaving Council Rock that they don't have, that kids in other high schools, like
I'm not seeing
Radnor,
it.
like Tredyffrin, like Conestoga, those kids are graduating. They get issued a laptop in 6th or 7th grade, and they get it. So I want to
Pensbury's
bring
going one-to-one next year.
My-
So they're talking about it.
Pensbury.
My 6th and 10th grader are very proficient with it. I mean.
No lack of proficiency. Same 5 years ago when my last graduated, no lack of proficiency. She knew how to use it. It's just not, well, that's my opinion.
Well, and I
One
think,
person's opinion.
I mean, you know, as Matt said, it's like, you know, moving toward one-to-one, it costs money, and there are a lot of other costs that besides purchasing the machines that you have to think about.
Right.
And, you know, you talk about districts that have successfully moved to one-to-one. I also know districts that took the plunge, bought every kid a device, and they didn't get used. Because all they did was provide the devices and say, here you go, no training, no support, and it ended up being a waste of money because, you know, kids might carry their device to a classroom, but they don't use it.
I don't know,
So
to
we
be
have
honest,
to-
I don't know
we
how I
have to-
feel about issuing a device. I like the idea they show up, there's a device, they have it.
Right,
But there's a handful of kids that don't have a device at home, and we could work around that. But personally, I'd rather have the device in the classroom, and they use their home device when they're home, unless there's a need, and then we support that otherwise. But again, as long as you guys have told me you're working at it, and
how do we expand this?
it's an educational gap that I would like to see the district move toward. It sounds like you are, so that was my only. Stop raising your hand, you're never gonna talk.
Have some decorum.
I don't.
No, that wasn't an insult.
It sounded like an insult.
It wasn't addressing you.
Fine, fine, I got a big scale, no big deal.
So the cost is at 1.2 million, right? I don't know how much a device is, but just to give an idea, what would it cost to give?
$983,000.
And what are you achieving with the idea?
Wait, is that a real number? Because 1.2 sounds very low to me. When you're talking about 11,000.
Chromebooks for we can get a Chromebook for $230. So if you look at providing Chromebooks, grades 5 through 12, it's about,
the
it's about
education and the time.
around $980,000.
But that was equipment
But
expenditure.
that's equipment.
That's just equipment.
So what is the additional cost for training?
I don't know yet because I'm still working on those numbers.
Okay, and you'll present those to us at some point, relatively soon, I'm assuming?
I will now.
Because I think this is an opportunity to go out to the community to see if there's anybody willing out there willing to give us some money towards this. If this is a program that
How
doesn't
many
increase
Chromebooks do you see in your office?
increase the millage.
One of
Chromebooks,
the things we're looking at.
I
is
just bought one
implementing
because Matt
technology.
convinced me it's the same, it looks exactly the same.
But how
as
many do you
my
see in your
laptop.
office? I mean,
I don't know what kind of device.
Zero.
No, but it looks the same as my Dell.
So.
It operates no
So-
different than my Dell.
And that is because, let's be honest, she works in an office that is a large corporation, as do I. And my infrastructure wasn't set up to support it. Now, we have, in my office, moved to the Office 365 online, and it would support it in a better environment, which, why did we move there as a corporate investment? Because the perception was it gives us the opportunity to reduce the amount of labor invested in each device, maintaining it and fixing on the device, because now you've gone back to fixing a server that accounts for much more. If Matt, yes or no, but that was.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't
understanding.
think learning the device is what's important. I don't care what device. I don't care if you use iPad. I don't care if you use Chrome. I don't care what device. It's the idea that you're typing in information, you're learning and typing, you're looking something up as someone is teaching you. You're interacting with technology as you're learning. You're not going and working on technology here to produce an output, which is good, and a skill we need, and please don't take that. But to me, the future is you're interacting with the technology as you're learning. It's all kind of happening simultaneously. It doesn't matter what the device is. I think most of our kids would prefer an iPad. No, the kids wouldn't?
They want
The
a
kids-
keyboard.
Ah, that's
What's
good to
actually,
know.
what's actually absolutely fascinating about this discussion is when you came, Matt, when you first got here, we talked about having to buy more and more powerful machines for more and more grades because the kids were invested in video editing and all these things that were happening, and you had to get heavy-duty machines. And that technology has progressed downward, that the machine, truthfully, their telephone now that they carry is much more powerful than the computer we were giving our seniors in
5 or 6
2000.
space shuttles.
Exactly, exactly. So it is interesting
More
because
computing power than 5 or 6 space shuttles combined. Right there.
space shuttle has less power than your phone. That's what you're about.
That scares me.
That's
And
fascinating.
there still are, Jerry, there still are in some of our courses, because of what the course deals with, certain kinds of computers or certain
Yeah.
levels are important.
Yes.
That we still, it's not as simple as we're gonna get rid of all of those types, but we have to think about
But it is,
what we can use.
but those are more.
They're specialized.
I was gonna say, those are specialized, which goes more to that, not so much concepts, but actually delivery
Correct.
around video editing, maybe learning the Adobe thing or whatever it is. But the general concept works on the Chromebook that Chrome is.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
akin to drill press and industrial arts. I mean, it's specialized.
Specialized in that stuff, right?
Yes.
So they can't go in the next lab.
Yes.
Do we have any public comment on this topic?
Oh, yes. Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. I've been on a 5-year committee, technology committee. We haven't decided one thing. They're deciding things on the subcommittees, but I can tell you this. I don't want to hear we don't have the money to advance technology. We can close a school. We have $3 million in an academic slush fund in the, for academics.
It's for PS.
We can charge the parents. Upper Dublin is getting one-on-ones with $70 technology fee a year, going to one-to-one. I don't want to see us get in the buy the device business. I would like us to have the parents pay the technology fee, the computer belongs to them, there's some kind of insurance on it, and we supplement with a few tech for kids who really can't afford it, or to have some in the classroom if they forget to bring it. I also think it's very important to have the personnel to help teachers integrate technology into the computer. This integration of technology, these standards, they're a platform, a structure. It's not a curriculum. A curriculum is a checkpoint. You have to have these things taught. And there are many school districts that still have technology curriculums. Council Rock has no technology curriculum on the elementary level. Hasn't since we took the staff out that used to teach it years and years ago, maybe 10 years now. We haven't had any curriculum. I also believe that I do believe in the curriculum coordinator system. I think it's a great system. I think it's unique to Council Rock. And I think having people who are teachers, who are also leaders, is an important way to advance curriculum in the school district. But those curriculum coordinators get 3 periods off a day. And I would like to see us give them 2 periods off a day for their curriculum and 1 to help integrate technology. And if they don't want to do that work, give that period to somebody who does want to do that work. There are many teachers in the high school who are just wonderful at curriculum. And they would help anybody, but they're teaching 5 periods a day. They can't. Our mentors only get like 2 periods a year. Well, none. They get no time off to be in the classroom with teachers. That's no way to train people. Every school district around us is doing something that we're not doing. They're going one-to-one, they have integration specialists, we're deciding, we're not on the cutting edge, we're on the bleeding edge of technology. I want to close the schools for that money for technology. If you want to spend money on empty classrooms and have technology in the poor shape that it is now, then that's going to be your decision and your legacy. I don't want to hear that we'll always have teachers who aren't going to get on the technology train. We should expect things out of our teachers. And we should also give them the help to go forward. Not say, we accept the fact that some people are just not going to use the devices, even if we give them to them, and it's going to be a waste of money. I don't want to be in a school district that has that kind of attitude. I don't want to hear that again. And I don't want to hear again that we can't afford it. We have ways of affording it. We have money, we have time that we can put technology, but you have to make it a priority. When I tell people in other school districts we don't have a 5-year plan, they say, you must be wrong. Everybody has a 5-year plan. No, we still don't have one. A year and a half later, we don't have a 5-year plan on what we're going to do. I'm happy to hear that there's, some stuff going on behind the scenes. I don't care who makes the decision, whether it's the technology committee or the administration or what. But like everything else, I'm more anxious that we move forward than to hear more talk about why we can't do it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very much for the
Excellent
presentation.
presentation.
thank you. So we're going to shift to our last agenda item for this evening, which is our update of humanities. So we'll let some folks kind of shift their seats a little bit, and you guys can come forward if you want to.
No, we have big.
No,
come forward.
I think I did that.
Come
You
forward.
can come stand here if you want to. I'll move.
If I could just start, I wanted to, we all introduced ourselves already, but I just wanted to, thank these folks here, that working on the gift.
Can we have everybody's attention, please?
What they've done working with me on the gifted programming is not part of any of their job responsibilities, so I'm very thankful.
Can we sit, if you want to talk in the hall, that'd be great.
So I am thankful for them participating in this. Also, David is one of the special ed supervisors. As you remember last year when we removed one of those positions, he used to be supervisor for gifted. That work has now been kind of split up among the other supervisors, but he has stayed on board to help with some of this work that we're doing. We were asked. Talk about.
Matt, get up here.
Where's my son? Where's my son?
Yeah, so.
Where's my fingers? Two things with your fingers. I'll end up doing that. Two things we're talking about is the gifted program review and the compliance monitoring for continuous improvement. Just to clarify what those two things are, the gifted program review was done by the Bucks County Intermediate Unit in May of 2013 at our request. We asked them to come in and we gave them 5 questions that we wanted them to look at for us in terms of our gifted program. The compliance monitoring for continuous improvement is something that we did not invite. It's the Pennsylvania Department of Education randomly every year select certain districts that they will come in and audit. The purpose of the program review is to look at our programming for the students. The purpose of the compliance monitoring, I'm sorry, but here's called an audit because that's what we refer to that. The audit is to look at how we are compliant with the regulations. It's pretty much looking at paperwork and how we comply with Chapter 16 of the Pennsylvania School Code, which deals with gifted education. So what you're going to see real quick is, remember I said there's 5 questions. We have a working document that we use that has the 5 questions, and then the document itself is 22 pages. We took all the recommendations. We have on a little chart that we work from. So we've taken that, and at the top you'll see what question it's referring to, and then below that we kind of summarized
what the recommendations were within that question. We're just going to talk to you about what we've done with those. There's a lot of redundancy. If you read through the review, there's recommendations that repeat themselves throughout the question. So, we've listed most of them, but you'll see some of them are the same. So if it seems like we're gliding over things, because we've already discussed in one of the other questions. Okay.
So the first key area that we took a look at was the screening, assessment, identification, and placement procedures. And then falling within that category, the subcategory, was to provide opportunities for school staff to understand the gifted learner and the referral procedures. So one of the tasks that we took on to address that, I'm going to jump down, was the training for all staff in all buildings, titled Who Are the Gifted? So that training involved looking at gifted characteristics, looking at Twice Exceptional, Chapter 16, our screening and evaluation process, and social emotional characteristics of gifted learners. So that was provided to all staff. We also took a look at and revised the pamphlet as a process pamphlet. You can see
Good enough.
And then also on the website, we took a look at the website and are keeping that up to date with more relevant information. You can see we're talking about the gifted program overview, as well as the screening and identification process, gifted staff, and gifted supervisors.
How often is that updated?
This was updated within this school year. Obviously, we'll need to, it's a work in progress. We're continuing to add to it, but it was updated this school year.
And Suzanne Loftus, who's our technology coordinator, has helped us to make it look nice. So, and that's relatively recent.
So continuing along with the screening, assessment, identification, and placement procedures, we first took a look at the multiple criteria that we examined when we're talking about whether or not a student is eligible for gifted support services. So one of the things that we considered was using standardized checklists instead of the district-made checklists that we use for parents and teachers to complete. We did take a look at a few different standardized checklists, but they didn't seem to glean the information that we wanted for programming reasons. The checklists that we have give us both quantitative and qualitative information about how the student functions in the classroom, so that was more helpful to us in the standardized measures. We also talked with some of the other psychologists in other districts that had been using standardized checklists, and they weren't a fan of them. So we moved away from those and revised our current checklists to reflect exactly what we want to look at for the gifted evaluation. We also have our psychologists looking at both social and emotional concerns on an as-needed basis. It's not a frequent occurrence that that's something that's relevant to the gifted eligibility decision, but when it is, our psychologists are aware that they should pursue further assessments in those areas. The same goes along with the nonverbal measures of intelligence. So if a student has a language deficit, or if they're a student with limited English proficiency, then those students you would want to entertain the idea of using nonverbal measures, and our psychologists know that that's appropriate too. Finally, we talked about the ensuring that all of the team members are participating in the GIEP team meetings and in the eligibility decision meetings. That training was offered through the training that Danielle mentioned earlier to ensure that staff, that our team members must participate in the process.
Okay, because you just used was offered. You made them do it, right?
Right, I'm sorry,
Okay,
I apologize.
Because I really want uniformity here.
Absolutely, yes, all team members must be present.
Okay, sorry.
The next question dealt with the design and delivery of our programming. One of the big things that was coming out was increasing academic challenge in math at the elementary and middle school levels. One of the things that we put into place was we use MAP testing, which stands for measures of academic progress. We use that in present level assessments for our special needs students. We now use that for all elementary school gifted students, so they will get a standardized assessment in reading and math beginning in 3rd grade. I don't think it was 2nd grade. Beginning in 3rd grade, they will get that assessment. The next think we needed to look at, when you look at gifted education, what we're obligated to do is provide opportunities for enrichment or for acceleration. So there was a recommendation that we develop procedures and guidelines for opportunities for accelerated math instruction. We actually looked at acceleration, I guess math was a focus of it, we looked at it in other areas as well. So we had a committee that started back really under the leadership of Joy when Joy was here. Joan Clay continued to do that as well. Most of us were part of it, and then we had teachers and administrators from across the district that were part of that. We came up with what we call protocols. They are, if we get a request or a consideration that a child would benefit from acceleration, whether it be what we call single subject acceleration, meaning they should be accelerated for 1 year for math, or for a full grade acceleration. We have a process that the team then follows. So they will typically call one of us and say, hey, here's the process that you're going to follow. And in that process, we have checkpoints, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and it recommends, there's no numbers or guidelines, but what we found is that the kids that we're looking at vary greatly in what they're bringing to the table. So it has a variety of data points that the team should gather together to look at to help make decisions as to whether acceleration is appropriate for that child. So, and I will say that the majority of the time that is happening in the area of mathematics, although we do get occasional requests in language arts. I think we've had, I can only think of one science that has come up over time, right, but predominantly it's in the area of mathematics. We did look at, one of the concerns was at the primary level, students that were very talented in mathematics. We used to have the enrichment program for math started in 4th grade, so kids at the primary level was really nothing for them. So we were able to, 2 years ago, we had a math enrichment at the 3rd grade level. And then what we did is our math specialists met with the gifted support teachers, and they looked at the courses of study and the units they were doing, and they worked with them to infuse mathematics into those units of study. So they have ways that they can challenge the kids in mathematics in what they're doing in primarily the 2nd grade humanities classroom, because we did not have math enrichment available to the students there.
How many, and we're talking, when you talk about that, that's at the home school for the student. That's in, so it's not like we have, because I'm looking at it and trying to figure out if there's a sense of community for kids who are in that situation. Are they working by themselves, or, you know, they're not? Okay.
They're working as a group pretty much through elementary
in
school.
math enrichment?
Yeah.
Yes, but not all. When we have youngsters that we accelerate a year or so in mathematics, we work with the family and the team and at school to come up with what's the best option. There are times when a student may be utilizing a math computer-based program where they are working independently. We try to avoid that because we don't think that that's best for learning.
Which is why
but it does happen.
Because it ostracizes them for talent, they become ostracized.
Learning is a social activity. It occurs best in confines of social interaction. So we try to make that happen as much as we can. But there are times that, you know, if you have an elementary school kid who's taken an algebra class and the family doesn't want them moving out of the building and we have to do it in an independent kind of way, they might be on a computer program. Robin Jackson training, there was part of this was that there was a need for increased rigor in our overall program, not just in what's happening in the gifted classroom, but in general, they're looking at the other ways that we can increase rigor in the classrooms. What happened here, and this theme will come up a couple times, we took a bunch of folks to a training at the intermediate unit. It was a multiple days training. It happened, I think, 3 or 4 sessions over the course of the year about things that you can do to increase rigor in designing your lessons and in doing your assessments. We are planning to then roll that out and do trainings across the districts, and we did do some of that. At the same time, the conversations about professional learning communities were starting. And if you recall from your professional learning community frameworks, there's 4 questions that we look at. The 4th question is, what do we do when students already know it? So embedded in the professional learning community philosophy, if I may, is you need to be able to provide opportunities for enrichment and acceleration for kids within the regular program. So we've kind of backed away from looking at that type of training for teachers, and we're going to let the PLC process do what it's going to do, because they're doing the same kind of thing, and it didn't make sense to do the same thing in 2 different ways. So, but that's the part about increasing the rigor in the classroom. I'm going to throw in here where there were not direct recommendations, but some other activities that we took that we were involved in. There's concern sometimes folks bring to us is, why is the humanities program run out of the social studies class? My kid's strength is not in social studies. It was the social studies curriculum, the humanities curriculum in social studies was originally meant to be thematic. It was cross-disciplinary. With the intensity of the social studies curriculum, with the social studies standards increasing, it became so much more content-driven that we lost some of the humanities part of it to some degree. So people say, well, why do you leave it in social studies? So we did pilot in one of our elementary schools, running it out of a language arts classroom. A lot of kids that are identified as gifted are very strong readers and writers. We did that. What we found happening is 2 things. The language arts block of time is longer than the social studies classroom. So if we were to put that out district-wide, it would occur an intense increase in staffing, because that teacher would not be able to teach all of the classes in the building because the class lasts longer. The other thing, though, that was a bigger concern for us is that we were pulling those kids out of the Journeys program, which is very sequentially based in the skills that are taught, and we felt that we were starting to see kids maybe not picking up some of those skills that are assessed and taught through that program if we were pulling them out. So that became a concern. So we backed off of doing that pilot. The other pilot that we looked at was in terms of the math enrichment. We spent 2 years meeting and then piloting some programs where we could try to group kids in a way that they could get, they would be what we call, I don't want to get into too much detail, what we call cluster grouping. So don't think of it in the old days when you had the robins and the bluebirds and the different groups where you had a high, medium, low. It's more of a cluster grouping where you narrow the band. So you don't have a high group, a middle group, and a low group. We have a narrower band in each one of them, which makes it a little bit easier for the teacher to differentiate. So we implemented that in 5 different elementary schools. I think we started at 5th, and we had some 6th and some 4th, where we were doing it. What we found in those situations was, when you talk about consistency, because our buildings vary in size, if you're in a building where there's 2 sections of a grade as opposed to 5 sections of a grade, that clustering looks very, very different. And you run the danger of it turning into high, medium, and low. And we don't want that, because the literature tells us that's not a good way to educate kids. So that was the problem that happened. When you have some elementary schools that do departmentalizing, so that one teacher teaches math, one teacher teaches that will automatically make it become high, middle, low. You're not going to see happen. And then finally, we looked at our data on the quarterly assessments, and I want to jump back. Dean Hentz, social studies coordinator, and Julie Eastburn, math coordinator, have worked very closely with this enrollments as well. We looked at the math data. It wasn't data analysis that would stand up to a peer-reviewed journal, but we did look at the data, and we were not seeing that there was a difference being made in the performance of the kids that were clustered at that time. That's like 2 years worth of work in a couple sentences, but that's where that was. So right now, that's kind of principals will look on a case by individual basis if they're going to do some of that clustering. The hardest part about doing that well is to have it be flexible. You can't have kids in a group that they stay in all year. There has to be constant rotation in and out of that based on whether we're into the skill being taught at that time. A huge amount of staff development would need to happen in order to do that successfully.
And PLCs will really take that on as well when we're looking at answering the question and moving kids through whether they need remediation or extension.
Can I ask a question? So regarding the PLCs, Dr. Elliott, maybe this is for you. So there was a change in the objectives for PLCs in the beginning of the school year. Can you remind me, if you know?
Change in objectives mean our plan for implementation?
Yes,
is that what you're referring to?
Exactly. Was it put on hold, or we just extended the timeline?
When we discussed it in October, we talked about full implementation being the start of the 18-19 school year. Now, full implementation doesn't mean like everything is perfectly in place and we're completely 100% doing everything that we want to do with PLCs, but that we've got the time in place to be able to engage teachers in collaborative work and also intervention time built into the schedule, which is what we're working on now. So we've not really slowed down. We're actually really continuing to move forward with that work and really digging into looking how to find time in the schedule for the things that we need to be doing.
So, but the timeline changed, something changed, right?
I think it did change a little bit from
extended.
what, yeah, we extended it a little bit, but
Thank you.
So I've got one more. You talked about the math and language arts didn't work. And we heard earlier a whole lot about, well, every other district is doing it, why can't we? Other districts are doing it. Did you look at what was a successful implementations? Why can't we do it? And Neshaminy can't, I guess is.
I'm not sure what, to answer your question, and if I don't answer, tell me.
That's fine.
We did spend a lot of time looking at what other districts are doing. I can tell you in my career of 20 years in special administration, you're constantly looking for that perfect program. It's just not out there.
Right.
For a lot of reasons. One reason being different parents want different things for their gifted students. So you're trying to make a program that has to be individualized, that has to fit within budgets, and has to fit within schedules. So how do we make that work for everybody? What a lot of districts are moving to are what we call a push-in type model, where your gifted support staff act as consultants and experts and go in and work with the classroom teachers in how they can help differentiate within.
Oh, you know that's a bad word.
Well, I'm going to say to you, I personally feel strongly that the literature does support that students identified as gifted benefit from some time to be with their likability peers. So we've tried to maintain that. So I don't know if that answers your questions. I mean, you can look at districts that do, we've talked about many ways to do it. Do you, instead of pulling them out of social studies, you pull them out in English today, math tomorrow, social studies, and science. We can go back and we look at all of those things and do it. There's staffing implications, and then again, I would want a much stronger sense from the parents of our students and gifted children that that's what they want before we went that direction. Is this clear?
No. Next, we're focusing on the GIP itself. We looked at the present levels of educational performance. With that, things that have been added in the last couple of years, with the MAP testing, it's one thing just to do the MAP testing, but we also now have implemented into the GIEP, adding in the reading, the math, and written expression under present levels. Regular education teachers now have access to the scores. It's provided by the teachers of the gifted. Computer-wise on eSchool Plus, there's a little arrow that teachers have access to that they can see that a child has a GIEP, so they could click to see what their strengths are. Differentiation now can occur as needed, helps to drive instruction. MAP is given once a year in grades 3 to 6 to help teachers monitor academic progress. In the middle and the high schools, as well as the elementary, PSSA scores, Keystone scores, district assessment are now included in the GIEP to allow regular teachers to work on student strengths. This is a strength-based document. One thing that came out of the gifted review also was how our kids know that they have a GIEP, because a lot of kids would say, I didn't even know I had one. So one thing we did under section D of the GIEP, we formed 2 different committees. One was formed for transition surveys for secondary and one for elementary. In the survey that is given out at the beginning of the school year and it's gone over in class, the survey starts out to explain what a GIEP is and that the individual student's input is important. In this survey, we asked the students what their goals are, what subjects do they like in school, what career would they like to explore through their years at Council Rock, and what colleges they might be interested in. This has opened up conversations between teachers, parents, and students. And we also list current activities within the community and within the school that students might want to enhance.
What age are we doing that?
It's K through 12.
Second.
Yeah, 2nd through 12.
Second grade, you're asking somebody what college they want to go to?
And you'd be amazed at the answers that you get.
We need to move them up a grade then.
See, it's interesting because, you know, you say, and I understand maybe there's a reason for them to know they have GIEP. But at the same time, I can think of kids, you know, I was always amazed how competitive parents are. I always remember when one of my children was born, I had parents comparing APGAR scores. You know, it was like ridiculous. And so, you know, like you got a 9, like you got an 8, you know, it's like,
So I wonder about GIEP, do kids think that this makes them special in a way that offsets them and do they use it competitively against other kids to go, well, in my GIEP class, we talked about this, the other kids like,
I don't think it's promoted that way. The elementary teachers, they have it within the pull-out program, so the conversation happens there, so it doesn't really trickle over to the regular when they go back.
I know, I just, maybe they do.
It's not a secret.
The kids are going to OT and PT and speech.
Yeah.
I know.
Honestly, the kids care way less than the parents
It's
care.
society, I got you.
If you look above, then there was the issue of the middle school. That was a big part of the gifted review and what did we do to change. I guess history is part of my background, so I wrote down the history of what we've done since and I just want to read it to you because it goes sequential and the reasons why we go from project-based and challenge-based learning and how that all came about.
Dave, could I just ask you to
Yes.
slow down just a
Okay,
little
sorry.
bit?
I know, I get passionate.
He's used to be telling to hurry up.
Yeah.
You stand when you want somebody to hurry.
The middle school principals met in June 2013 to determine designated gifted support teachers to start in the 14-15 school year. It was, if in the middle school level, if you were on the team and you taught social studies, you were assigned to a gifted class. Instead, they went to Holland Middle School now has just one teacher of the gifted, and he teaches both 7th and 8th grade sections. Richboro Middle School, traditionally, they were further than anybody else with the separate person per team. They went down to one 7th grade and one 8th grade teacher for the gifted, as well as Newtown Middle has done the same. Newtown Middle had to because the numbers have a couple, and now teachers have to cross team, which was the question why they didn't do it in the first place, but it seems to be working out very well. In the summer of 2013-2014, 7th grade teachers focused on how they can develop challenge-based learning as a part of the 7th grade curriculum for the 14-15 school year. And this is where Dean Hens took the lead, and he brought in the teachers over the summer. In the 14-15 school year, all 3 middle schools started challenge-based learning in grade 7. The teachers of the gifted met several times over the year to compare how things were progressing. The curriculum then, what was typically was always what's the difference between honors and gifted. The curriculum in the gifted was compacted to allow time for this challenge-based learning project to take place.
So compacting mean was, as an example, what the rest of them classes might do in 5 days, they would do in 3 days. Or what the rest of the team might do in 9 weeks, they would do in 6 weeks.
In the summer of the 14-15 school year, 8th grade teachers focused how they can take challenge-based and project-based learning a step further for grade 8. The teachers of the gifted followed the similar model for grade 7 and enhanced the idea for students to focus on policy and laws for grade 8. Students in grade 8 would have the choice to use their challenge-based 7th grade project and focus on laws and policies about it, or they had the choice to pick another topic based on their interests and focus how law and policy influences today's society. In the 15-16 school year, the 8th grade teachers compacted the 8th grade curriculum and allowed for the challenge-based learning to guide the instruction for the class. They ended the year with a Pennsylvania senator having an open discussion about laws and policy. Amy Fetters, Richboro Middle School teacher, was the lead teacher of the 8th grade teachers with Gifted who set up this project. In the 15-16 school year, the 7th grade teachers tweaked the first year based on feedback from parents, students, and self-reflection. Each 7th grade teacher took the challenge-based learning to a different level. An example of this would be last year, for the second year, Holland Middle School, the teacher, the class decided to go with a specific project, which was the Red Panda project from Philadelphia Zoo. It was the Unless contest. And what they did at Holland Middle, they took it, instead of going individualized out in their own directions, they took all their strengths. So the kids with the math, they did charts, they did a lot of the numbers, they sold t-shirts, they figured out how to do that. The kids who did like the film industry, they put on a YouTube video explaining anything. The kids who like to write, they wrote scripts for the YouTube project. So everybody worked together. There were 32 schools participating in the LS project. We finished second with their efforts. And that's basically what the middle school is right now. But if you look, it's a difference between challenge-based learning and project-based learning. We started with just challenge-based learning. And if you look, they're very similar. Kids have to pick the theme of interest. The teachers led the guiding questions. They decided how to lead the students, but the students have to find the essential question. They have to write the hypothesis and they have to prove it. Same thing with the PBL, project-based. One of the differences, one is the challenge. So one is how is the students going to impact the community? The project could be a specific student interest that they themselves want to carry out. Both have to gather resources. There's an example I'm talking, I guess, implementation, construction, evaluation. Kids had to put together, and they also had to put together self-reflection to show how they did. So they took ownership to this. And it's working out really well. There's examples of the project-based 8th grade. These are 3 different examples of what kids have done. What they put the project together, they decided, they wrote the essential questions, and that's examples of what they would maximum class size act of 2016 is something they would like to put together. There's a challenge-based 7th grade example. Part of the Panda project was reducing the junk mail. So kids in Holland Mill, they also wrote letters and they did their YouTube thing, collected as much junk mail from people as they could to recycle, and that, believe it or not, helps to save the red pandas. The money went towards that for the Philadelphia Zoo.
Okay, and then.
Thank you.
That's, in the middle school, it's 100% social studies work. And at that point, because of different, because of the curriculum allows,
yes. But there are kids in their GIEPs that also have math or English, or if they have a specific strength, that is a strength base that we have some kids with math that have, if they're 2 or more years advanced in math, they will have a specific math. Yes.
What do you do if they're not 2 or more years? They're in social studies then, and honors whatever, then it's basically, okay. Because we've gone to, instead of classroom-based instruction, it's great, you're choosing classes and moving forward. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then the next area, communicating and coordinating the GIEP information. So really the big idea here was to consistently communicate. And the way I look at this, which was really essential, was increasing the communication between the gifted support teacher and the regular ed teacher. So in looking at the different ways that we did that, obviously through trainings, various trainings. So the training that I spoke to earlier that was conducted in the spring of 2015 touched on that, as well as trainings with gifted support teachers on writing GIPs and incorporating further like the MAP testing and input from regular ed teachers, including additional information into the GIP. Also looking at articulation of programming, so talking about gifted supports and services, not just obviously within the gifted support class, but then also bridging that gap to the regular ed classroom. And then identifying the twice exceptional or students that might be eligible for gifted, but also for, let's say, speech or language or specific learning disability, and programming for those students. Dave spoke to eSchool Plus. So that is available for teachers when they go in and they pull up a child that's in their classroom, they will automatically be notified that a child has a GIEP. That's in addition to that conversation between the gifted support teacher and the regular ed teacher on the supports and services that are being delivered.
Can you track how many people actually look at that?
The GIEP?
I mean, can you track that a regular ed teacher clicked on that?
No.
You have no idea if they, okay.
The only time I know is when somebody calls me and says they clicked on it and they couldn't find anything, so I know some people are looking at it, and there's reasons why that happens.
I believe that, that's okay. I
believe whether, we have an obligation as a district to make, that teachers must know whether a student has a GIP or an IEP. So that's not our primary means of doing that.
Okay.
I have no way of knowing whether they clicked on that.
Fine, then we're good.
The main point is really that conversation between the gifted support teacher and the regular ed teacher. The other one piece to note is that it's ongoing. So we spoke about the trainings that did happen, but we are talking about doing the training, relooking at the training for next school year and revisiting that and doing it on about an every 2-year cycle. So that should be happening soon.
eSchool Plus, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just say what that is again?
eSchool Plus is our student management system, so that's where teachers go in. Hack is from eSchool Plus. Teachers do their attendance, their ratings, and all that stuff.
I imagine you folks all in a room speaking initials and acronyms, and no one else understands what you're saying.
We are terrible at that. My department, I know. So
You're gonna stamp out TLAs, right? 3-letter acronyms.
I don't know that.
Chuck, who are the case managers at the middle and high school levels?
Let's read the CMs.
The gifted support teacher is the case manager.
Okay.
we say case manager, support teacher, custodian, any one of those.
Yes, okay.
And I do apologize if we're talking.
And for,
It's like phonetics.
that's for GIEP.
Correct.
For IEPs, who manages?
They have assigned case manager as well,
Special ed teacher,
one special.
usually.
What's the compliance monitoring for?
Okay,
continuous
I
improvement?
meant to talk about this on in the beginning, I forgot, so thank you for asking.
I know, I just wanted to.
No, I know. So, consistent case managers is what Dave had spoke about at the middle school level. So, we made a shift, I could say like 4 or 5 years ago, and it could have been any one of the social studies teachers within the middle school that would have been a case manager. But to increase the consistency and the conversations that are happening, we went back to the model of having a designated social studies teacher as a case manager. So as Dave spoke about at, for instance, Richboro Middle, you have one 7th grade gifted support teacher and one 8th grade gifted support teacher who manages the caseload. Yeah.
Let me just, I'll do the compliance monitoring.
Go for it.
What happens with compliance monitoring, that's the audit, not the program review. The team comes out, they review files, they interview staff, and they're basically looking, your GIP team must consist of these members, did you do that? Okay, they then come up with what we get what's called a corrective action document. So we're told, here's the things that you must correct. So that audit happened in spring of 2014. We met in the end of the 2015 school year with the PDE folks. They closed us out on all aspects of that document, which means they said that we have successfully corrected what they want us to correct, except for one area which is still open, which is on our paperwork and processes for dual exceptional students. Dual exceptional students are students who are identified as both having a disability and being gifted. Currently, we have about 44 such students in the district. They felt that we needed to do a better job of, and when you are dually exceptional, all of the gifted stuff has to go into the IEP stuff. And they felt that we were not doing a great job of clearly delineating the gifted pieces within the IEP. We've been ready to close out on that. The person who needed to do that for us took a leave of absence from the Department of Education. They finally assigned another person. I finally got the other person to agree to come out so we could close it out. Then the other person came back, so then that person wouldn't come. So it's been about a little over a year that we've been trying to get them to come close it out. We're ready. Poor David, every time he's had to do it like 4 different times because it's a lot of work to get ready for them to come out, and they keep not coming. So we're ready to close out on that piece.
That's me. The training of all staff, there was 2 different parts to this. Again, I'm just going to read what I wrote down. In the 2014-2015 school year, we met, meaning this teachers of the gifted, I met with the various different levels of the gifted. We reviewed the history of the gifted in Council Rock. We reviewed the law, and through several meetings, we went through the curriculum and we updated and focused goals for the GIEP. Looking at the goals on the GIEP, traditionally the goals of our gifted students were based on Bloom's taxonomy of higher level thinking. In the 14-15 and 15-16 school year, we took those traditional goals and we married them to the curriculum. In the cases where students are accelerating 2 or more grade levels higher in curriculum, we network with our curriculum leaders and developed academic goals for that curriculum. So some kids now, it's not just social studies, although the majority still are, but if kids are 2 or 3 grade levels higher, we now, with the help of the curriculum leaders, we have math goals, science goals, and English goals. We married them again to Bloom's taxonomy. We also blended in the state standards. Yes.
Why 2 grade levels? Why not 1?
Because the Department of Education, when we met with them, and they did a boot camp on this, said that if kids are performing on grade level or up above, you can differentiate instruction within the classroom.
That's that bad wording. Okay.
PD?
No, differentiation.
Oh.
Which is a misnomer. So, go ahead.
So it's been a challenge. We continue to work on this today. In 15-16 and in 16-17, we've been working on unraveling the realist standards for social studies because there's a huge writing English reading piece that goes with social studies. Social studies is the only curriculum that also has realist standards, and that crosses curriculum. In the 16-17 school year, the teachers of the gifted are now participating in the development of PLCs with other teachers. In 17-18 and 18-19, we want to incorporate that to answering question number 4 and using resources and the teacher strategies to help the regular ed teachers along. Going back into the 14-15 school year, we focused on developing a training for regular ed teachers on how to increase the rigor of the subject materials for the gifted learner. Collaboratively, working with our Council Rock professional development team, the designated people, they attended trainings on rigor and acceleration for all classroom subjects. From there, we developed a training where we brought in grade level lead teachers, one from each elementary school. On 1/13/2016 and 1/26/2016, we offered a workshop called Meeting the Needs of the Gifted Learner. It was a full-day workshop dedicated to training grade level lead regular ed teachers on how we can increase rigor and acceleration for our students in their classrooms. In the morning, we covered the history of the gifted, why gifted instruction is not just in the social studies classroom, and how it can be implemented among all the key core curriculums. We covered the purposes of a GIP. Dr. Lambert explained the law. In the afternoon, the 4 major curriculum district coordinators presented examples to the teachers on how to enhance, enrich, and challenge gifted and high achievers in the regular education classroom. All those grade level lead teachers then were to go back to share at their grade level meetings in each building to share the information so we could spread the word.
And the other area was how, asking us, recommending that we provide staff development specific to the gifted support teachers. We encourage our teachers to attend conferences. In Bucks County IU every November has a day-long conference devoted to nothing but gifted. Most of our teachers go to that each year. University of Pennsylvania has a leadership conference in the summer. Many of us have attended that at least once. The PAGE conference, Pennsylvania Association of Gifted Education, in the springtime. We've had teachers go to that. PBE has what they call their gifted boot camp. It's like the basics of gifted education that we have staff and that as well. We do our best to have our gifted support teachers act as support to the regular education teachers in how they can boost what they're doing for the gifted students. It's difficult to do because they're teaching full loads at the same time. But to the extent that they can informally and through team meetings, that happens. The gifted support teachers will participate as PLC members, so that will again be a way, an avenue for that to be done on a better basis, on a more consistent basis.
Do you track who does this training?
Who goes to the training?
Yes. I'm more concerned with who consistently does not.
Of the gifted support teachers?
Well, all those conferences. If we've got gifted teachers that are offered that and never go, I have a problem.
So I can't answer that for you today, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, I think it's something, I don't need to see, you need to look at. But if we're not continuing ed,
Whenever we do staff development, there's always a targeted piece to it. We look, are there people that we feel to look at? Maybe we do look at it.
Yeah.
But, so did I hear in the beginning, though, we had a supervisor that we don't have any longer? Like, is some of this a staffing issue?
Yes, no, you did, because this was, I argued this at the board meeting, we had someone leave.
So I'm just saying, like, I
We're
don't
one
know that
down.
Chuck's looked at that, but maybe when we had a supervisor who looked over, stuff, that person might have been able to say, oh, every gifted teacher has attended at least one, because they were looking at that. I think, I'm just trying to recognize that we're down a supervisor.
we still, we are, but we still need to deliver. And it's just.
I agree, I'm just, but it just came to mind.
I can answer the first one since I was the supervisor who was cut.
There you go, see?
That all the elementary for the November BCIU, it's a requirement, so I can tell you all 10 elementary have gone. The middle schools, because it's hard to get substitutes, I'll be honest. So what we do is we allow 1 per building in the secondary level to go, just because of the cost of the conference itself and because we have to pay subs for all these people, and subs are getting hard to find.
I really just talked about that. The PLC will do some of that work of integrating the gifted support teachers into that process. And then again, we would like it to be more formal, the opportunities for the gifted support teachers to provide that consultation, but it's just difficult within our current scheduling staff.
And then the last of the key areas was looking at the vision, the purpose, and the structure. So the two main components of this was looking at the district strategic plan, so looking at Chapter 4 as well as Chapter 16 and making the necessary changes, which was done by Chuck, presented to board, and put on the website and made available for all key stakeholders. And then looking at the gifted program did not have a formalized mission statement. So that took us about half of a year to do right after the program review was complete. We had key stakeholders come in, worked pretty heavily on that, developed the mission statement and the shared values. So that was completed and shared with all stakeholders and also available on our website.
Can you share that?
Yep, you just have to.
I see it's a link.
Yep.
I'm on it.
So you place Matt?
He's on it. Maybe. Yeah, well, so to get in the technology course.
It's like the computer
Is there web access
all
now?
the time.
I have it written, I can read it if you.
It's not that, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
Can you read it anyway?
Yes, again. The Council Rock School District Gifted Program enhances the educational experience for gifted students by focusing on the individual strengths of each student as a learner. In the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom, our program fosters creativity and innovative thinking in the development of self-directed and meaningful contributors in an ever-changing global society.
And that committee was made up of teachers, parents, students. We have a lot of student involvement in doing that as well as representatives of administration.
So this is, it may sound critical, but it's not, I promise. Why did it take 6 months to develop that mission statement?
Did you ever mission statements? I always ask that question myself, but when you get people down to wordsmith the words and get it exactly right, but we also want to bring students in and tell us, what do you think the mission of our program should be? Parents, what do you think the mission of the program is? So when we say 6 months, it wasn't weekly meetings for 6 months. It was over a period of 6 months that we probably met 4 or 5 times.
We enlisted the help of Joanne Barati from the Bucks County IU, and she came and helped co-lead that initiative, but we also were working on 3 other key areas at the same time, so it was a coordination of those efforts. But it, like Chuck said, it did take time to pull those meetings together with all the key stakeholders, and then come back in smaller subgroups, and then wordsmith and draft to come up with the final copy. So, and then we also had the shared values, so that took some time.
So it's obviously very important, and so how is it used? Mission statement.
And the mission
It's all the time and
statement,
resources and that we put into it, how do we use it?
the mission statement, it guides what we do from day to day. You know, it's what we believe in and guides our efforts and our work with our kids.
So do you think people are referring to it often? Or is it just something that needed to be done?
I think it's something that needed to be done, or we're as part of the strategic planning, you're always required to do it. There are mission statement people and there's mission statement not people. So, I mean, there's some people that will probably go back and refer to it all the time and there's others that don't. I mean, I don't want to say that every time we sit down as a committee, we go back and review our mission statement, but we will periodically. Yeah.
See, Mark touched on this. Mirror my thoughts on it, maybe mirror my thoughts. I never really understand mission statements. I understood in a large corporate environment, there used to be, J&J was famous for, they had a credo. There were 4 principles within that. And it was something you use on a day-to-day basis, because if you came up against a conflict, you said, how do we resolve the conflict? And you went to the credo and said, we do this for these people, this, and you say, where are we serving within that? Apologies, you know, I'll wear the banner that says, you know, sometimes we send groups out to do things and we get results back, and you know, I look at it like a judge giving a charter to a mandate to a jury, that sometimes the jury has done a good mandate and they come back with a resolution, which I don't know if it's always workable. For me, that's not now, live with the one you got, but for me, if you're developing, it goes for everybody in the administration, from my perspective, if you're developing a mission statement that includes the points that resolve conflict, that says, you know, what do we do here?
Matt, can you click on it
We
again?
go to it.
Because your point is very well taken. So we developed the mission statement, and I think the shared values might speak a little bit to what you're talking about. If you scroll down, the shared value should be at the below, there you go. Where that's, directly speaking to what we actually put into action.
And the shared values grew out of the
mission
same
statement.
process.
Yes.
And yeah, I was gonna say, in my experience, and it's a very recent experience, working on a mission statement, it's half of the value comes from the discussion and the work that goes into creating the mission statement. It's sitting around a table and discussing, well, what do we really think are our shared values? What do we really think is important? And that debate can be more valuable than the final product. I don't know about in the business world, because I don't go there, but I serve on the IU committee for many, many years. I've gone to other districts and done similar reviews for districts, and you get data and guidance in other areas, and you always look at their mission statements. They're all pretty similar, and I think it's because they all reflect what we believe education should be. So I would assume in a business environment that might be a little bit different. I don't know.
Well, and it's the right conversation. Probably instead of shared values, it would be shared objectives in a business statement, right? Because what you're looking for is, what are your objectives? And the businesses have objectives, and that's where it's business school 101. That's where J&J's was unique, but in a favorable way. It was unique because it said what the objectives were, and it wasn't always profit. It was equity, it was fairness, and that's why it was unique. And so the shared values are a good idea, probably more than I'd want to have, but I look at it as objectives. When you're doing something, because I want to shape what you do, and what you do, everything you do should have an objective. And somehow that objective, actually in politics, Bill Clinton was famous for anything you bring to Bill Clinton, he could bring back in his political speech to 4 points that he had in his campaign. Similarly, anything that we do should be able to come back to a shared value or a shared objective.
Can I ask one question? There are no requirements for the teachers that are any different than, how does one?
There's no sort of special certification.
Right,
No,
so
their
how,
Paige is
do they just
working-
apply?
Paige is working in coordination with PD to start endorsement classes, so
Okay.
that at least there will be some embedded training within teacher certification programs, but as of to date, there isn't any requirement, but that we take that on through the district initiatives of the trainings and then also sending out to various workshops.
Okay.
But then, for example, you look at at the secondary level, they are social studies teachers. They're teaching a gifted class or two, and they're teaching other classes. They have the same schedule that everybody else has. And on top of that, they have 40, 50 GIEPs that they're responsible for. Right. Doing. So they're the ones that are doing it because they're passionate about wanting to do it.
Can I make one follow-up comment about the mission statement? So again, my comment was meant to be critical because I think it's a valuable exercise. And you come with the shared objectives, shared values, whatever you want to call them. My real question was, you folks are very valuable, your time is valuable, and your allocation of resources is valuable. So I just want to make sure that the end result of what we have is being used by the team. So if the whole team that's dealing with the GIEP could say, yeah, I refer to our shared values when I'm working with a student or with my other colleagues, or yeah, I know what the mission statement is, or I have a general idea of key points of the mission statement. If it's just something on the website, that's disappointing. So really, and you don't have to tell me right now, I'm just curious if we got together your team, if anybody would really remember the overall message of that mission statement.
Sometimes we have to go back. I did use it once at the end of May. A teacher came with a great idea, and she said, Dave, this would be a great idea to change the curriculum it was part of the middle school project. And the other middle school teachers at Gifted were saying, we don't think it's a good idea. And it got into a heated debate. And then we said, what is our mission statement? Does what your idea have match what we want to do? And it didn't. And then she's like, oh. And then she backed off. So it did solve. So I'm hoping that answers your question. I don't use it often. I used it that time.
Any other board comment before we move to public comment? Stephanie?
So I'm Stephanie Barriateris, and I did come to the meeting tonight specifically for this topic. It is a topic that's been of interest to me for many years. I was involved in 2013. I was lucky to be invited as one of the 160 people across the district, parents, educators, what have you, that were involved in the program quality review. And I thought that was very well facilitated, and the recommendations that came out were very concise and to the point. And so as a member of the community, I felt like this is exactly what I hope to see, which is we're on a process of continuous improvement. You take a rigorous process, you involve the stakeholders, you define the issues, you come up with recommendations, and then you set about to implement it. And you can imagine the reason that I'm here tonight is that as the parent of 2 gifted children, I've been quite disappointed in what I see actually implemented in the gifted programming. So I'm a little bit less about some of these topics which are, how do I want to say, like higher level. I'm down at the concrete level of, I have 2 children who've been through the gifted program. And in fact, Dr. Lambert and Mr. Heiser, we've been in a dialogue about their specific needs for a good 5 years or so. So I know this comes as no surprise that, I'm opening this topic and trying to highlight a deficiency in the curriculum for gifted children. And what I've seen over these really past 5 years, the deficiency I want to point out is in the math curriculum. So we're lucky enough as a district, and I think it's an excellent program, to have math enrichment now for grades 3. And I'll tell you, it's a very rigorous and standardized process to test in for that program. At one point, I saw a document, this was a few years ago with my younger daughter, I saw a document from Council Rock that said it was about 5% of the students tested at that early stage that made it into the math gifted program. And I have to say, the teachers that you have there are truly impressive. Mrs. Kane, Mrs. Doherty, there are others. The deficiency comes when you get to middle school. Okay, so you have taken the top 5% in terms of aptitude for math specifically, and you've taken them through this program over 4 years in which they have really accelerated. And then you put them in the middle school, and there are 2 levels of middle school math. There's academic and there's honors. And because Dr. Lambert was willing to pull this information for me, I'm going to show you, I'm going to speak to, in the 7th grade, this is just Newtown Middle School, 53% of the students are in honors math. So what I see as a large deficiency is you've got your top 5% of students in terms of math aptitude, and you're putting them into a curriculum that is targeted really to the top 50% of students. And this is the reason why, and I tell this story often, and I apologize to you guys who've heard it before, but my older daughter, who's math gifted, spent 2 years at Newtown Middle School in math, reading novels, okay? She would listen to the first few minutes of what the teacher was going to introduce, and then she already had a handle on that, and she would read, and she got straight A's, and I was dissatisfied, and she was not challenged. So back to one of the shared values, I can tell you that she was not.
Matt, could you put that back up?
She was not provided a curriculum with appropriate rigor, challenge, and choice. And so I was happy to see these recommendations come through. This is 2013. I started working with Mr. Heiser on what we do for my older daughter. Mr. Long was involved, the guidance counselor was involved, and as well as Julie Eastburn. And I felt like I was the one coming to the table. I could document it for you, bringing forward what should go into that GIEP. And it's not just what in terms of learning objectives, but how to accomplish those learning objectives. And what I found was a culture of no. That there was, and I don't know where it comes from, this culture of no, but it was everything that I proposed, there was a reason why that wasn't appropriate. And in fact, when I tell you what just happened to my youngest daughter, because I took this same issue and started working on it 2 years ago, my youngest daughter's in 6th grade, I started talking with Mr. Heiser and Dr. Lambert 2 years ago, because I knew this would happen for her as well. And so I wanted, and I said it many times, to have a dialogue to work directly with the administration on how do we address Kate's needs. And I realize we're starting early, but once you get to middle school, there's no curriculum that's appropriate for her. And so after a while of not making progress, because there were all kinds of reasons. Well, it's not in the time frame of the GIEP. Well, we don't have enough data. And so finally I took it to a due process hearing. And I will tell you that that due process hearing was very informative. I do not know why the district chose to spend money on an attorney for that due process hearing as opposed to spending money on the one thing I asked, which was to accelerate, so she could accelerate, provide her curriculum to accelerate once she gets to middle school. Because really that's the only alternative gifted math students have. And I'll tell you how many gifted math students there are in the district. And I realize it's hard to advocate for gifted children, I'll tell you, because I'm gonna be the one who's accused of saying, oh, her child is special. Well, you know, this is why she's advocating. I'm advocating because I think it's the right thing for a gifted program and for the children who are going to go through the gifted program. In particular, those that are math gifted, especially in a society like ours, which science and math and engineering is where we ought to be setting our children up to succeed. Again, if that's their aptitude and their interests. All right, I'll find the number. Oh, here we go. So across the district in 6th grade, there are 169 kids that are math gifted that will enter 7th grade taking that honors math and likely being under, not fully challenged.
You know what the percentage is?
I don't.
We graduate about 1,100.
No, how many kids would be in 6th grade?
Oh, was it?
Well, we graduate about 1,000, I'm just saying, in a class between the two high schools, so 10%, 20, almost 15%.
Really, apparently, if we have 1,000, there are 160, then it's actually.
So what I'd like to do tonight is request the beginning of a dialogue about making a curriculum change. I know that as we've had the discussions with my youngest daughter, that those requested changes to the GIP sometimes got met with the response, well, what you're really doing, Stephanie, is looking for a curriculum change. And actually, I was really just advocating for my daughter, as I should, to be appropriately challenged as a math gifted student. Since we haven't gotten there, and since I've had the chance to talk to other parents at Newtown Elementary whose children are in the same program, who also feel likewise, I would like to start a dialogue. And I realize this is something that's going to be met with all the reasons why we can't. As you know from hearing from me before, I will continue to show up and continue to advocate for what's right for our kids. If Council Rock cannot do right by its students who are interested in math, engineering, problem solving, we really need to step back and say, who are we? We are a district that has such a wealth of resources, teachers, that we ought to be doing this. And here, I'm just gonna read you directly and then I'll finish, what the gifted program review said. The need, number one, to increase academic challenge in mathematics at the elementary and middle school levels. And, with all due respect, I think there has been work done, for sure, But until we have curriculum that is specific to this level of giftedness, we are letting those children sit bored in class. And that's a waste of talent. So I hope that you will bear with me and perhaps be willing to engage in the dialogue about what curriculum change might be appropriate. I don't even know if I want to call it a change, because I've been told by folks who've been in the district for many years that there used to be 3 levels of math at the middle school. But I don't know, because I don't have any specifics on that, and so I really can't speak to that. So thank you for listening. I realize the hour is late. You can tell this is an issue that's important to me, and I would love to offer up parents to give you feedback on how things have progressed since the 2013 quality review, because while we can talk about activities, I don't know how you gauge whether we've made progress and satisfied these 5 needs unless you're talking to the parents of gifted students.
Can we, jump in?
I mean, I want to be respectful because we've had numerous conversations about this, and and while I'm not going to say are there places where there should be more rigor in a certain grade level curriculum or not, certainly could be. Whether there should be 2 levels of math or 3 levels of math, that's not me, that's not gifted programming. I do want to say, just in fairness, we have our kids in elementary and middle school end up at our high schools. They get into the math curriculum they're in at the high school because they've gone through our elementary and middle school curriculums. We have very high numbers of students taking AP courses, BC calculus courses, doing very well on those courses. So while there may indeed be room for conversation about some areas where there could be some more rigorous program, there must be something being done right in that program for a large number of kids, because our statistics are pretty good with how kids do on standardized measures in those areas.
I think it's a twofold issue probably too. Perhaps just with our override, the fact that we allow, is the core problem in the math program, or is I'm saying is that where the problem is, or is the problem in the fact that we allow anybody to override into an honors class? And I don't know what the numbers are in terms of the numbers of kids that really struggle when they get to the middle school, and that override is allowed, and we're shifting and removing kids. Is that a contributing factor? If we're talking about the percentage of kids that are in the honors math class, is that part of the piece of it at all, potentially? I mean, you have to teach the curriculum, you have to teach the kids that are.
I would only add to the discussion that, I would think if we want to look at this, we need to really talk about the math curriculum at the middle school as opposed to the gifted. I'm just gonna add, my experience personally was that kids didn't struggle at all in the middle school honors. The 50% that were in there might have been kids who were bored, they did fine, but they hit the high school and they couldn't continue at the honors, they had to go down to the accelerated. So to the point of, if there are 50% of our math students in honors, and some of them may be struggling, but the masses are not, you just have to say, do you have enough students to be able to teach 3 levels of math? Then you have to have enough staff. I mean, I hate to say it, but it all comes down to the staff and the money and the number of classes. If there's 80 kids in a building, that's roughly 2.5 classes of kids that you could teach a year up in math. Or,
It's that 169 was just for Newtown Middle.
Seriously.
Oh, no,
No,
sorry,
no.
it was across the district.
Yeah, that's too many. So even that number's high, but there are things, the thing of train a teacher who could teach that. So I think there are potential conversations we have on, but we have to understand there's financial impacts to any curriculum change we make too.
I think Chuck was right when he said it's not necessarily, what?
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk.
I think Chuck was right when he said, it's not necessarily within his realm because it's a curriculum. But I also wanted to say that I hear the observation and I reflect on other things that we're doing as a district. And I'll look at the language that we have when we talk about language. And we have people who come to us and say, well, you don't offer a Latin 4. I had someone send me a note. A friend of mine said, how come you don't offer a level 5 in high school? Because some of the kids are get up to level 5. And I'm not asking, this is not for conversation, it's just for, a consideration as we look at this, which says, if we accelerate that aspect, those kids come out, it's a sad commentary. Our kids will come out of that program, they'll go into the high school, and at what point do they stop? Because at some point, how much can I keep offering beyond the end of it? Because I start to get to the point at the end of that, in high school maybe, where they do BC calculus. That's great. What comes next? And I don't know that I can offer that because I'll start to have diminishing returns at the end of it, which means I'll get into the same situation I have now with some of the European languages, foreign languages, where to offer a kid the foreign language at the highest level they can, they get to a section that has 6 kids. I don't know that I can do that, support it. It's not for discussion at this point. My point is, that's something we as a board have to think about, which says, I don't mean to make a child who's very good at math pause or stutter step in the middle school, but we have to figure it out. Chuck, you spoke to it too at some point when you said, a parent who wants their kid to have algebra and they're in the 3rd grade, God bless that child, they're not going to get it at that school. They're going to have to go somewhere else potentially to get it. This may be part of a solution set. So I hear your observation, and all I say, I'll leave it to Chuck, Barry, Dr. Elliott to work it through, but I'm concerned that a point solution has further implications for what we do at the high school. It's middle school is the middle. It's
Can I
not
just
either.
respond to, and with all due respect, Jerry, but you posed the question back on my comments, so I just want to say, so then why do we offer math enrichment at the elementary level? I'm trying just to put these two things juxtaposed against each other. Why do you do a program that, again, 5% of students selected?
You may be right.
Well, I want to throw in also, I'm just curious, because I had an observation when my kids were going through school, where there were kids who were in humanities or math enrichment in the elementary school, and then were not as successful as you would think they would be on that trajectory once they got to high school. So I hear you. I myself had a child who is exceptionally talented in math. But it would be a curious thing to see. I mean, if there's 169 6th graders in math enrichment, do we look at that subset of students and look at how they're performing in the middle school? Are they all getting A's in honors math? It's a wildly big assumption. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Because once you're in the middle school where you are taking all honors classes, maybe, their performance is not the same. I don't know.
But the gifted children, sometimes when they're bored, do worse, as you probably know.
Nonetheless, I think that it would be valuable to see how this group of students, what do we know about them other than the fact that they were in math enrichment? You may be identifying a problem or a situation, I should say, not a problem, a piece of data that is very significant and affects a large number of students, which could affect how we as a board could have a discussion. Or you may be identifying something that is just something where you have an exceptionally gifted child and there's a handful of them. I don't know the answer to that because I haven't seen any data either way. But it is an interesting statistic, certainly, to say that you've got this large number of kids into a pool where there's half the middle school is in honors, and what does that do to that group of students overall? But I mean, it in and of itself, I think it just requires some more data to see what else feeds into it.
And just to be clear, all students in math enrichment are not gifted, and all gifted students are not in math enrichment. So
Right.
it is a broader issue, as you say, more of a curriculum type thing than it's not. And I don't want to answer your question because I don't know the answer, but I know Julie Eastman could talk to that because we have had that conversation.
I could rattle off a few other pieces of data that I would find interesting too, but I use that just as.
I mean, I know that Julie has looked at that and she has had.
Although it's not, I understand gifted per the definition of humanities, it doesn't overlap, but gifted from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Chapter 16, you have to be specific to those children's aptitudes. And we have a large number of students who have math aptitudes at that level.
Right, but we're saying it's just because there's 169 in enrichment, they're not all gifted. So they
Well,
all don't have.
They all have math aptitude.
That's right, but they're not all subject to the Department of Education's GIF. You know, it doesn't mean we shouldn't educate them. I just think it goes to as a curriculum issue as opposed, it sounds to me like it'd be better served in curriculum. That's.
Can I ask a question?
Only if you raise your hand.
I'd just like to make an observation that this is one of those few special education discussions we have where we actually said, well, it may cost too much.
I didn't say, I just said there were cost implications.
Yeah,
I didn't say
that's, you know,
there are cost implications of changing curriculum.
Yep.
And technology and everything else. And then we have to buy chillers. So
But would we say that about any other special education?
we'd say it about yes. We cut a special education.
Oh,
We
okay.
cut, we're making
That's
cuts.
So I have a couple questions. You were talking about your daughter, so is she in the gifted program, GIEP?
She's in both.
Okay. So just another acronym, just tell me what GIEP is. I think I know what it is, but I.
Gifted individualized education.
So, this is one of the areas that I have a hard time understanding. So if there's an IEP for a student, isn't that an individualized education plan?
Correct.
Therefore, shouldn't we be very disappointed that the student is reading in a math class because she really doesn't have a individualized education plan that's being followed? No? Is that a fair question?
I think it is.
Yeah. And to Mike's point, I think rightfully so, IEP on the other side, special education, any needs that these individual students have in the rooms, we accommodate. I think we do it well for the most part, right? People move into I'm looking at Jerry because you seem to be, you're the expert. Yeah. So we should do it for the gifted kids too. And I'm disappointed to hear that we don't. Wendy, let me finish, please.
But you asked a question that Jerry answered that I would tell you I've had opposite experience.
Okay.
So IEPs, no, there are plenty of parents who argue with us over that are just regular IEPs and take us to whatever.
I took the district of due process.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you asked that
and
question, so no, that's not true.
And you should, right? So, because if you're advocating for your child, which you should do, so you apologize for two things, which I think should just be innate and part of all that. First of all, your child being special, of course your child is the most special child to you. And my children are the most special to me, and we should never have to apologize. And no school district or school administration make us feel like we should apologize for that, right? I didn't mean it. It's not, please, if it sounds like a criticism, it's not, it's just saying, it's maybe, it's not Councilor Rock, I think it's just maybe an overall issue. And you should, thank you, and you should be able to advocate, and you should advocate for your children. So please don't ever apologize for that. But it is disappointing to me to hear that if we have an individualized education plan and we have a child sitting reading after a couple of minutes in the math class, we're not following an individual plan for that person effectively. Maybe we're following checking boxes, but we're not being effective. So that's concerning. That's all. I'm not being critical. I know I can sound like I'm giving you a hard time, but I'm not. I'm asking the question, I guess. How do we resolve it? And how does that go back to our values of provide curriculum with appropriate rigor, challenge, and choice if this child is sitting in class reading a book in a math class because she's not challenged? And how many other children are out there that their parents aren't taking the time to come and talk to the school board about it?
And believe me, if whatever data might be collected, whatever set of, a systematic approach to what questions, what data, is this a curriculum issue or is it not, I will totally respect. But I must point out as well that through this process, I did not feel like the individualized piece was being captured because I was asking for specific things that could have been accommodated. They were not, and really, they were quite modest. So if we don't want to do the curriculum, if we've said math enrichment is good for 3 through 6, let them do what they, what 50% of the kids are doing in 7th and 8th, and then go on to AP. If that's the curriculum choice after some evaluation, then you need to address the fact that a GIEP, and again, this is by law, has to be individualized to that student's abilities, and that I think a systematic review would find, in fact, the quality review, parents said, it's not.
So I just want to follow up with one thing, I'm sorry. But I would just say that my son, who went through Council Rock, he had an IEP, and it was not, I never had a meeting where there was more than one person in the team there, right? And it definitely felt like we check this box, check this box, check this box, and move along. So I hope that stopped since 2008 when he graduated. But it could have just been that he was a pain in the butt when he was in high school, and maybe the teacher just kind of done talking to him. But
that has stopped.
Good. Because he graduated.
I'm just telling you, there's no IEP at district meetings happening in this district with one person sitting there.
Okay.
And if there is, I wouldn't want to know.
You couldn't fit all the people in the room.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my.
I mean, that is both the handicap.
I'm crazy talking about why I think that might have been at that time, but that's not the case.
Well, it's not about me, right? I want to make sure that the parents out there are comfortable advocating for their students and not being told no all the time. And not made to feel like they're difficult parents for advocating for their students. And suddenly the term, my kids are special, becomes a negative term. Every parent's children are special to them, and they should be treated that way. So we have 11,000 kids in this district who are everything to their parents, right? And we should at least give an effort to do what we need to do for these kids. And I think we do generally, there's no doubt about that. But to hear that there's a child who wants to learn sitting in class, reading a book instead of doing what you need to do, is just a little disconcerting.
Well, and I'll clarify a little bit here that I mean, there's some things that I don't have specific numbers, and I want to do some more exploration. But I do know at the middle school, we have students at the middle school that are taking high school level math courses. So they are not in the regular math class. They are taking whatever the next course is in the level and the progression of math courses in the middle school. So we are accelerating students' learning, and we are providing that. Now, I don't know the specific numbers of how many students are doing that, and that's something, I made my notes here about connecting with Dr. Eastburn to start looking at more specifics, because she would be able to talk to that. But it is something that, saying that we don't offer anything at all, I think I wanted to clarify, we do offer things, I just don't know what those specifics are, of how many kids.
And could I ask, because I also heard Dr. Lambert refer to the fact that for acceleration, there is a procedure and a guideline, which I assume means something in a document with regard to what are the criteria to accelerate. When I did the due process hearing, and I asked a middle school teacher, as well as I believe Ms. Eastburn, could they produce the document that showed the procedures, the guidelines, the criteria, just like they could if you were trying to test into math enrichment. And it's in a transcript, the answer was no, they were not aware of it.
And I'm sorry if I've not been clear about this as we discussed it. What I hear you're asking for is, could I please have the document that says, what is the criteria that enables a student to be accelerated? We don't have that. We have guidance on what a team should consider in order to determine whether a student should be accelerated. What are their PSSA scores? What are their DRA scores at the elementary school level? How do they score on the SCAT test if they went into math enrichment? We have guidelines. There is no document that says you need to check off this box, this box, this box, and get these number of points in order to be in. So when we said no because we don't have that. We have a document that says, if someone comes forward and asks for acceleration, the team should meet, these people should meet, they should discuss these things. The outcome of that should drive to step number 2, we're finished, or now let's look at these things and have these conversations. That's what we have.
I'm sorry, I want to be very careful here. And you brought it up, and I think we need to be very cautious here. You spoke of that you had a due process hearing. The board, as we sit here, is not, I am not aware of the status of it. I have Dr. Lambert, who's responding to issues that came up in a due process hearing. I have to tell you, I'm very uncomfortable with this as a conversation in this environment. You may look at me and say, hey, look, you're skirting on the legal side of it. We have nothing to look at to understand what it was. Dr. Lambert's reviewed it. You reviewed it. Is it so? I really need to ask that conversation stop at this point.
If I can just,
Be
I was
careful.
not
Be very
responding
careful.
to anything in the due process hearing, I was responding to the question that was asked tonight.
Sitting in the, I'll trust you for that.
Yeah.
Sitting in the absence,
I've got one more
concerned about that.
and then you can public comment. Sue, one of the things that I see with this is we can compress a social studies program to free up more time to accelerate or do something. But it seems just against everything to compress a math program and fill in with next year's math at the end for these students, because at some point, and I hear it from teachers, well, what do we do with them in the end? You know, I as a school director and a parent, kids' brains are like sponges. They all take different amount of water at a different rate, but we need to give them as much as they can every year. And I that's the ask from parents, is just give them what they can take in a year. And it can be appropriate. You can say, no, not as much as you, but we just say, no, not in math. We can't do that. We can only, and then if they can take it in 3/4 of the time, we'll spend the other 25% enriching, which is not accelerating. It's doing the same thing different ways. It's enriching. And I think that's my ask. I mean, I'm done at this point. I'm out of the game in terms of anything I can do. But for other parents, it keeps coming up. Fill it as fast as the kid can take it, is what we're looking for. That's all. It sounds easy as a parent, you know, so, okay, I'm done.
Nancy?
I have deja vu because this is a long discussion in the 90s, the same thing, that kids are not enriched once they get out of grade school. And the only kids back then who used to be able to accelerate were ones who came from different school districts and transferred in from St. Pensbury that uses, and you probably know the case, uses acceleration as enrichment. They don't have enrichment. Kids are just accelerating. And a lot of school districts do that. They just push them up into higher, whatever, you know, courses for math. Some school districts like New Hope Solebury, which you know of, send kids to Bucks County Community College when they, you know, go through whatever they can offer. And once again, I'm here at these meetings because I believe in public education. And I believe that the goal of publication is to teach every child to their abilities, no matter what their abilities are. And when I see us spending money on what I think is the wrong things, I don't want to sit here and listen to people having problems and say, well, you know, that costs money. That's our primary focus, and Wayne says it all the time. And that's what we should be spending it on, not on keeping classrooms empty. So I would say it's so easy at Newtown Middle to accelerate kids because the high school's right next door. You know, as far as transportation and ability of a lot of different classes at different times to fit it in your schedule. And Dr. Lambert's right. These kids who are enriched in grade school and get, you know, the normal classes, they do as well in the upper level classes. As they're doing well, they're taking high level courses. But that does not justify them being bored for 45 minutes a day in their curriculum. Yes, the outcome, your child's not going to be hurt by it unless they get turned off to school, which that's a possibility. But as far as how accelerated they could be when they get up to that high level, they'll click in with everybody else, no matter what school they came from, if their parents send them to Bucks County during the summer or what they do well, very well, and there's a high number of them that take like our high level courses. So I applaud you for the thoughtful way that you brought this tonight. I agree with, when I heard you say, I apologize for advocating. If you don't advocate for your child, who will? You hope that these people will, but they have their own constraints. And I'm advocating for them to spend the money in the right way so they don't have as many constraints in academics. So I can't believe I'm hearing this. It's 2017, and a friend of mine went through this in 1994 rigorously, and and she did get her son up to the high school. So thank you.
You two can talk afterwards if
Yeah.
you want. I think we're gonna wrap it up for tonight, if nobody has any additional comments, and then I will circle back and follow up with everybody at a later date.